Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Panacea End User Virtual Workshop 2020. This is session 5 of the workshop, where we'll be looking at the Security by Design framework and looking at specific one of the tools which is part of this framework. The second part takes place this afternoon at 2:30, so you're welcome to join us on that as well. We'll be making an announcement this afternoon, a very important announcement, an opportunity to be part of Panacea. But in a minute or two, I'll pass the floor to our coordinator, Dr. Sabina Magalini from the Gemelli University in Rome. So we'll just wait a minute. I'm just going to stop sharing, Sabina, so you can share your video. And we can... You could just wait for a few more people to come online. Thank you again for your time and your feedback, we really do value it a lot. It's up to you when you want to start, Sabine, if you want to wait a little bit. Yeah, I can see you, yeah. I'm not sure if we can see you on this. Can we confirm that we can see Sabina?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So good morning to all of you. My name is Sabina Magalini, and I'm an emergency surgeon here in the Policlinico Gemelli of Rome. Our hospital is coordinating the project Panacea. This project has the aim to deliver a set of people-centered cybersecurity solutions for healthcare structures. So in my role of project coordinator, I would like to welcome you to this second end user workshop with the intent to have feedback on the tools we are building. As you know, this workshop deals with one of the solutions. Today we will be speaking about the Security by Design Framework. Naturally, we thank all of you who are participating for your precious time and extensive experience you are going to bring. All the suggestions and the evaluations that you will offer will be put to good use to fine-tune the tools that we are designing to help hospitals with cybersecurity issues in these very difficult times. I thank you very much and welcome to the workshop. Good work.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sabina. So I'll take back the screen. And just give you a quick overview of the agenda. But before I do that, I'd like to make an important announcement. Panacea has launched its first of 2 open calls. This one is for the for services to develop, apply and validate techniques for the design and implementation of medical devices based on a security by design principles. The applications are now open. You'll find further details on our webinar, which you can see at the bottom of the slide, www.panacearesearch.eu. The application deadline is the 15th of October. And just to give you now an overview of the agenda for the day. And then we've just heard from Sabina Magalini, Panacea coordinator. After this brief presentation that I'll be giving, we'll start the live polling, asking you to tell us what kind of stakeholder group you belong to, and then we'll give a welcome to our participants online, and then we'll go straight to the tool, the presentations and the demos. We'll ask you if you have any questions specifically about what you've seen this morning, and then we'll move into an open discussion with some more live pollings on how you would position the tool in terms of its usefulness and a bit usability in the healthcare sector and how it sits in terms of innovations. So I'll pass the floor then now to our first participant, which is Federica Forti from RENA. She'll be presenting the Panacea Security by Design Framework. So I'll stop sharing now, Federica, and pass the floor to you. Thanks very much. And thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank you. Okay, hope you see my screen, and good morning, everyone. I am Federica Foti from Rina Consulting, and I am the leader of one of the work packages of Panacea project. And during this presentation, I'll try to show you the general overview about the Security by Design framework. In particular, I will touch this main point about the Security by Design framework. And so after a brief introduction, in order to understand the context together, we will focus on the two macro components of the framework, on their integration, and then on the innovation points, and also on the user scenarios. So, one of the solutions proposed in Panacea project is Security by Design framework. This is a framework that is composed by two technical tools, which are named SDSP, that stands for Secure Design Support Platform, and CST, that stands for Compliance Support Tool. We will see them in detail later. So the idea of the Security by Design framework was born in order to overcome the design limitation of the medical devices, which currently often don't specifically or poorly include the security engineering aspects regarding the cyber risk. Indeed, it has been demonstrated that in the healthcare sector, there is a big lack of cyber awareness. And now it is really important to introduce security aspects within the sector. This in order to put in place an immediate action to develop a programmatic approach to identify, mitigate, and remediate the risk. So the key point of this approach is to introduce, as I said before, the security aspects regarding cyber risk, but since the beginning of the design process of an object. And I mean, starting from the requirement phase to the deployment and the operational phase. Indeed, it is fundamental that a medical device or a healthcare system must be designed from the foundation to be secure.
Stamattina con una paziente. No,
So
no,
what,
nel senso c'è sto webinar, questi di Rina stanno facendo vedere.
Yeah.
so, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Please remember to mute if you're not actually presenting. Thanks. Sorry, Federica. Off you go.
okay, thank you. So, okay, what Security by Design frameworks aims to do is to introduce cyber risk aspects already at the initial design phase of a development of a medical device or a healthcare application, since it is understood that serious safety issues may arise when covering only the design as an output of a process and not including the process itself. So, Security by Design framework considers a typical assessment and a system monitoring audit workflow with the support of specific solutions addressing one, a conformity assessment. So, I mean, using the tool named CST, and one, addressing the risk assessment using the other tool named SDSP. Both these tools refer to a list of applicable standards that are related to privacy, security, and healthcare domain. The applicable standards selected for the framework are these ones, and there are 9 standards that have been selected after conducting interviews with several experts on the basis of their relevance in terms of cybersecurity in healthcare domain. Indeed, they refer mainly to the healthcare sector, medical device, to security aspects and privacy. So, okay, and now going a little bit more in detail of the framework. The Security by Design as anticipated before, has the purpose to support the quality experts and the technicians during the whole life cycle of a medical device or any health application using the two different software solutions anticipated before. These two software solutions are the Secure Design Support Platform, SDSP, that is a tool that will support the security of a medical device or an information system in development by providing a software platform for risk assessment analysis. Then its risk assessment analysis may produce security controls that will lead to new requirements to be embedded in the system in order to improve the security. The other tool is the Compliance Support Tool, the CST, and this tool will support the quality assurance process during the whole life cycle of the object in order to put in place an assessment audit of the process supporting the user, ensuring the compliance to current standards in the healthcare sector. So, in Security by Design framework, it is fundamental the introduction of security aspects, so security cyber risk aspects since the beginning of the initial design process. So as you can see in this figure, from the requirement phase to the deployment phase until the operation maintenance phase. In each phase, the user will be supported by both tools, so by CST and SDSP. These two tools cover two different aspects of the security by design. The compliance support tool regards the design process compliance to standard and regulation. And the secure design support platform regards the design contextualized output and supports the experts during the risk assessment and the treatment of the object. These two solutions are conceived to cover the whole life cycle of the object, analyzing not only the design as an output of a process, but also the process itself. So for this reason, the solutions can be used standalone, but also together to provide useful information to each other, with the common objective of strengthening the cybersecurity of the system in scope. So here we can see the contact point between these two solutions, and it is represented by the fact that the risk assessment performed by the risk analyst expert using the SDSP tool that is on the right, and that provides at the end of the iteration of the risk assessment a report that includes the security controls present into the system or into the medical device, and also the suggested ones that are necessary to manage the risk. So at the end, SDSP has a report that can be used by the CST user, so the other tool on the left, to check the compliance to standards as an evidence. So when the quality expert that uses the compliance support tool checks the compliance, can upload also the risk assessment report as an evidence. So we can understand that it is not a strictly technical integration, but it is mainly functional. So now I would like to underline that the security by design approach already described leads to some innovation points that are really important, goal of the Panacea project. So first of all, it is really innovative, the development of a tool that will support the user to verify compliance to standards that are relevant for the cybersecurity. And it is also innovative, a tool that will support the risk assessment expert to perform an assessment in the healthcare sector. Then another innovation is the extraction of taxonomies. And I mean the extraction of vulnerability, threats, security controls from the healthcare most relevant standards, and this in order to take into consideration during the risk assessment scenarios that are specific for the sector. And finally, last but not least, the innovation is represented by the use of the security by design principles, lead the manufacturer in decision-making of possible security controls to be implemented during software system engineering early phases. So these are the main innovation point of the security by design framework. And so finally, the last focus is about the end user scenarios. And so today, the current approach used by medical device or system manufacturers is mainly safety by design. And it consists in the protection against threats that originate within a system, for example, a system failure, that are accidental events. Instead, with security by design framework, we want to consider also the security aspects concerning medical device or system ever since being designed. So in order to demonstrate it, we will use 3 different use cases that are associated with 3 different scenarios that I'm going to describe one by one. So the first scenario is scenario 2, that is the FPG LIS-Medical Device integration. And the scenario regards the design of a new laboratory, the core lab. And the design process is driven by the Gemelli Hospital, the FPG, that hosted the core lab, and regards the integration between the laboratory information system and the medical devices that perform the laboratory analysis. In this scenario, it has been identified the end user entity, that is a hospital, and the life cycle phase of the object under assessment is the deployment phase. In fact, the scope of the scenario is to demonstrate a more secure deployment of a point of care testing inside the core lab. And in particular, the aim is to verify that the process is compliant with the relevant standards, and we can do it using the CST. And the other goal is to evaluate the risk associated to the core lab, focusing on the deployment of the point of care testing inside the lab. And we can do it using the SDSP. The second scenario is scenario about the QTrobot-enabled Healthentia relationship. Just for information, Healthentia is a web application and QTrobot is an assistive device. And they have to be integrated in order to obtain information about the patients and to collect the outcomes. Both Healthentia and QTrobot are to employ tools from the involving Panacea Toolkit to enhance the security in their joint operation and to increase the level of trust of their users. Particularly for this use case, unlike from the previous one, the user is a manufacturing company and the considered life cycle phase is the design phase now. And the scope of the scenario is to demonstrate a more secure design of the integration between QTrobot and Healthentia. And particularly, the compliance support tool will be used to support the design process, helping users to verify the compliance rate to standards and regulation through the process. And SDSP will be used to support the designer to reduce the cyber risk related to the QTrobot and Healthentia system by assessing suitable countermeasures. Finally, the last scenario is the medical device design and regards a manufacturer of a medical device that is active in design and development of a medical device of class 2A or B. The user of this use case, as for the previous one, is a manufacturing company, but the considered life cycle phase is the requirement phase now. Today, there is no more information about the manufacturer because basically there is no manufacturer. Indeed, there is still an open call in progress. But basically, the scope of the scenario is to demonstrate a more secure design of a medical device. So in detail, we will use compliance support tool to verify the design process of the medical device follows the selected standard and regulation in the healthcare domain, focusing on the requirement phase. And then we will use a secure design support platform to evaluate the risk associated with the design of the medical device and propose suitable security controls to reduce the computed risk. And also here focusing on the requirement phase. Okay, from my side, it's all. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for that. It's very, very interesting. Since we had a few people joining us after the welcome, we've just got another person joining us. Kuden, let me just add a Kuden to the list. Just bear with me a second. Okay, so what we'll do now, we'll have the quick stakeholder polls. If you could just start launching them, Christina, and then we'll pass the floor to our participants for a brief introduction of who they are and their interest in Panacea. So I think we can start, and then we'll start with any Q&As that we have on what's been presented so far. Okay, we're ready to launch the first two polls.
Yes, thank you, Steph.
Thank you, Christina.
Going now to launch the first poll on stakeholder profiling. The question is, which type of organization are you representing? I read the options: standard organization, hospital, clinics, or healthcare facilities, patient associations, medical device supplier organization, cybersecurity and privacy supplier companies, insurance companies, research organization, policymakers and regulators, or other.
And we'll just give you a minute or two to answer this. Voting is welcome. It's not obligatory, so you can opt out. But we really would value your, any inputs you can give us on all of the polls. Thanks.
Okay, thank you all for voting. I'm now going to share the results. As you might see, 17% of you come from hospital, clinics, or healthcare facilities, 33% medical device supplier organization, 17% cybersecurity and privacy supplier companies, and 17% research organization, and 17% voted for other. I'm now going to launch the second stakeholder profiling poll. The question is, what is your role or field of expertise relevant for the workshop? I read the options: information technology manager, information security officer, risk manager, hospital or other healthcare provider sub manager, clinical engineering depth officer, medical staff involved in clinical information sharing, information system provider or developer, medical device provider or developer, researcher or other.
I think we can perhaps close it now, Christina. We've gone over a minute. Yeah, thanks to everyone for voting.
I'm now sharing the results. We have 20% voting for risk manager, 20% information provider, information systems provider or developer, and 40% medical device provider or developer, and 20% researchers. Thank you all for voting, and I'm giving back the floor to you, Steph.
Yep. Thanks very much, everybody. Christina, thanks everyone for voting. I'm just going to move this. I'm just going to now then pass the floor. Christina will give you the right to introduce yourselves if you want to. You can keep quiet if you prefer not to. But we have some of you we've met already in the earlier sessions of this series. Some of you are new to this session this morning. So online we have Mohan, Kulkarni, Garrick, Markarian, Jordi Puig, Ekuden Rios, Gabriele Unterberger, and Julio Vivero. We know that Ekuden can only stay up on the call on the webinar until midday, but that's fine, Ekuden, no worries. We'll pass the floor to you in your alphabetical order by surname. So we'll start with you, Mohan, if you'd like to introduce yourself, your company, and your interest in Panacea. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. So, morning all, myself Mohan, and I'm representing PMD Solutions, which is Ireland-based company. PMD Solutions is market leader in respiratory sensors manufacturing and respiratory monitoring systems. My role with PMD is I'm a product manager working here. Our product is basically class 2 grade medical device, which will go on the patient and which will capture patient's breathing pattern or breathing rate, and it will be displayed to the nursing station. So specifically talking about the COVID pandemic situation, this particular scenario is very helpful for the patients and the frontline workers. And my interest in Panacea project is to understand what exactly Panacea project is, and then how either I can use it or whether Panacea can be promoted to PMD. So just to understand. So thank you.
Yeah, super. Thanks very much, Mohan. I will pass the floor then to Garrick. The floor is yours, Garrick, if you'd like to say a few words.
Hi, sorry, I was muted. Yes, good morning, I'm Garrick, I'm CEO of Renicom. Among many things, we do medical devices. It's basically remote patient monitoring. And we also do like a fall monitoring systems and so on. Quite a few of our system is installed in the various hospitals in the UK and abroad. And our interest in Panacea is basically to see how we can enhance cybersecurity and security of our system, which are already installed and which will be installed in the near future.
Thank you very much, Garrick. Jordi, the floor is yours if you'd like to say a few words. You should be able to unmute directly. If not, we'll pass the floor. We don't seem to be hearing anything. Ekuden, if you'd like to give a brief introduction.
Yes.
Yeah, and also mention Sphinx as a peer project. Thanks a lot.
Yes, hello, this is Erkuden. I work as researcher in cybersecurity researcher in Panacea Research Center in Spain. I am working in a Sphinx project, which is very similar to Panacea, also about cybersecurity in healthcare. And I am involved in the risk assessment part of the Sphinx. And let's say attendance to these sessions of Panacea is to try to understand better the solutions that you already have and try to see how things could be innovative in this sense.
Thank you, Akuden. We'll pass the floor then now to Gabriele, if you'd like to say a few words.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. So my name is Gabriele Unterberger. I was the CEO of UMS, an Ascom UMS, a medical device software manufacturing company for 20 years. In year 2000, my company was certified for the development of medical device software. So I have quite long dated experience in medical device regulations, and particularly the application of the medical device regulations that were originally thought for electrical safety into the software world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriele. Lulia, the floor is yours if you'd like to say a few words. Welcome to the webinar.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Now I'm
You might have to speak a little bit louder, please. We can't hear you very well. Sorry.
better now.
Yes, it's a bit better now. Thanks.
Okay. I have like two roles. On the one hand, I'm a member of the European Cybersecurity Organization, in which I play the role of chair of the supporting group in healthcare. There have been several things such as liaising healthcare organizations, identifying needs and challenges in cybersecurity in health sector, and also disseminating some information and awareness in that aspect, and collaborating with other working groups in EXO. And I'm also working for GMB, which is a Spanish company working in several sectors. Space is one of the biggest ones, but we also have quite an important activity in the health sector. I'm GMB and business partner for international markets. Well, international for us, it's outside Spain. And my interest in Panacea is basically to be aware of what innovations are being done in cybersecurity and healthcare, basically.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I'll stop sharing now so that we can start. I don't know if you want to start the Q&A now, Federica, if you have any questions for the panelists, or we can move on to the next onto the demos section. Should we move on to the demo part, the next part of the, and then we'll take all the Q&As and the interactive discussions afterwards. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
we
yes.
can.
Yes,
we can do it.
Okay. Yeah, we just made a small change to the agenda due to the to give time for the participants to join us and then present themselves. I think we can move on with the agenda.
I think that we can proceed with the demo.
Yeah, so the floor is yours, Rafaela.
Okay, I'll
Thank you.
share my screen.
We're doing quite well for time though, actually, just so that you know. So yes, that's good.
Okay, I'm
Good morning. I'm Raffaella Condoleo, and I'm a software architect working for RIA. And my role in this project is team lead and software architect of the secure design support platform. I will now show a really brief introduction, brief presentation, and then we will go through a live demo of the platform. So this will be the main point of the brief introduction. Just a reminder of the PANACEA Solution Toolkit, the description of SDSP, an overview of it, a small talk about the architecture, but linked to the main features of the tool, and then the demo introduction. As you already heard from Federica, one of the PANACEA Solution Toolkit is the Security by Design Framework. And in this framework, we have two solutions, two technical tools linked together by a functional link, the SDSP and the CST. These two tools focus on two different aspects of the security by design, while CST focuses more on the development process and compliance to certain standards. We use those same standards and our tool for risk assessment in order to give a contextualized output. So we perform risk assessment, and we give a context to the medical device healthcare system and see how the risks can be avoided in advance, following the security by design, concept. So the secure support design platform provides a tool with many goals. The main we like to underline are these: we perform a risk assessment and help the expert decision during the risk assessment, and we're customizing it for the specific domain of the healthcare. We protect the confidentiality of information, and one of the first goals was to store the risk assessment input and artifact, so requirements, design, all the documents that are used during the risk assessment, so that you have an history of it, and you have all the security documents that can be most of the time confidential, stored in a single point of failure, let's say. The idea of SDSP is to promote the security, as for CST, is to promote the security by design. So to ensure that the security is taken into consideration early, in the early phases. So already in the requirement and design phases. Currently, the risk assessment is performed usually on systems that are already existing. And usually the security aspect is taken into consideration not in these early phases, but in a phase where the design decision has already, the main design decision has already been taken. So just to give you an overview with this platform, as you already now understood, we will perform risk assessment. We are doing risk assessment of medical devices and healthcare system. So we are specializing it for the healthcare domain. The methodology supported for the ones of you that have a background in risk assessment process is the European methodology MEHARI. And the possible inputs, other than the user inputs that usually are there for all the methodologies during risk assessment, that are assets, vulnerabilities, threats, and security controls, we added to these inputs the documents used for risk assessment, the design elements, so the one coming from design artifacts, and the requirements elements. The output of this platform are two, the main outputs: scenarios that are and the associated security controls that are detected. So the possible scenarios that are going to be to happen in the contextualized environment we were talking before. And the possibility, so the security control that are suggested in order to fill the gap with the risk that are detected, and the requirement that are linked to these detected security controls. So the possibility to write the requirement and suggest the requirements taking into consideration this missing security control. From an architectural point of view, I don't know how much you can be interested in the architecture. The main point of this brief overview of the architecture is to tell you that the platform is basically created with the microservices pattern, so is really extensible and flexible. And that means in this context for the Panacea project that we have a multiple risk assessment methodologies platform. So for now, on the European side, there's, as I was saying before, the Mehari methodology, that's the European one. The baseline of this platform comes with the Canadian one, that is HTRA. But easily, in case some suggested methodology comes from European Commission or whatever, we can easily introduce other methodologies and add them. Different inputs from the risk assessment point of view. Usually requirements and design are not part of the risk assessment methodologies. So that's why we following the security by design concept, we added these possible inputs in order to take decisions for the risk assessment expert. And the focus point that we have in common with the other tools, CST, is the part linked to the standards. We detected standards and we are extracting taxonomies, scenarios specific for the healthcare domain. And this is possible again, and that's why it's I put it here near the architecture. This is possible because it's through configuration, so no changes to the platform, but there's a configuration that gives the possibility to extend it for the healthcare domain without development, basically. And here we are. I'm going to perform a live demo for you. These are the steps. We will log in. There's the use case we are using is the one that is part of the Panacea project. We advanced a little bit the validation phase in order to check our outcomes from the project. So this is a real case. And we will have also an overview of the project part, of the asset assessment part, vulnerability, threat, audit, risk scenarios, treatment with by adding the security control, the generation report. These are all the steps that the Mehari methodology, as most of the risk assessment methodology, follow. But since we worked in this Panacea project using the tool as a service, so our risk assessment experts are using it with the help and with the cooperation of the stakeholders. There's the possibility for the stakeholders, obviously, to use it by themselves. In this case, we are using it as a service. I will underline to you in what parts of the tool there's a cooperation with the stakeholder. So which part are most usability on our side in this case, in these use cases, so that it's not, let's say, your concern, and which part are mostly the parts in which the stakeholder are concerned. So that's it.
Thanks a lot.
And I will go on. Yeah. I guess the share screen stopped.
Ah,
for some reason. Can you see it now?
Yeah, we can see it now. That's fine. Okay, no worries. Thanks.
Okay. So if there's no question until now, I will go on with the demo. Okay. So for what concerns the SDSP, the Secure Design Support Platform, this is a web application. So I will not show you all the functionalities because it's the time doesn't give us the possibility to show them. So I will enter as a project manager. So all the admin parts will be up to I think they're not interesting for you, so we will not look at them. But there's an admin part in which there's a possibility to create users. There's a possibility to obviously to import, perform configuration and whatever as all the web tools. So what we will do now, we will go through the Healthentia QTrobot risk assessment. As you enter the tool, the first thing you will see is the project list. And as you just saw, there's a possibility to hide or show the projects based on the need of the user. But basically, there's a list of projects, and the user can decide to enter the project, create a template, create new phases, create a new project. We will not go through the features of creation of new templates, project, and phases because it's not the focus of this demo, but we will go through the main part that may interest you, that is the risk assessment part. So from this point of view, we have the project list. We have a project with, let's say, an overview of the project info, and in the moment we load it, we enter into the risk assessment part. We decided to put a reminder of the project, a reminder of the procedure info here in the main part, since the risk assessment expert must be always aware of this info and take them into consideration while performing risk assessment. And this is the main part. Then there's the engineering data part. That is the one where the risk assessment expert, again, is reminded of what is the system under risk assessment or the medical device under risk assessment. What is the scope of the risk assessment that is decided together with the stakeholders. So this is where you or the people that is involved on the medical device development work together with the risk assessment expert so that the boundary of the risk assessment can be defined together. In case of the Healthentia QTrobot, we are talking about a new product that is that puts together the Healthentia system that collects outcomes from clinical trial patients and an assistive device that is the QTrobot, a robot that interacts actively with the patient through several devices. So through the camera, through the speaker, the microphone, and sends the information to the system, to the Healthentia system that collects this information, creates statistics and or just store the information and distribute them to the clinical trial stakeholders. So we define the scope. We defined that the servers are into the device print, that is the producer are into the scope, the procedures and policies are into the scope, activities, business process into the scope. So we define it together with the stakeholders as usual for a risk assessment. Obviously the phase we're interested in for this medical device is the operational one. And here is the part I was talking about in the previous presentation, the part in which you archive, in which you store all the information divided by different types related to this risk assessment, so that in case you need to review one of the decisions taken with this documents, obviously you have them stored here. And so that you can store all the sensitive information from a vulnerability and security point of view in a single point. As you can see, we have no requirement at the moment in this use case, because this use case, as Federica told you before, is focused on the design part. So we added at the moment one of the design diagrams that was created by the manufacturer, and I will show you in a couple of minutes how we use this information. So this is mainly from the project overview point of view. Once all this information has been gathered together through interviews with the stakeholders, again, that's where you are involved, and through documentation coming from certifications, coming from policies into the organization, and so on. So most of the job was done offline through the documentation, but then there were interviews, obviously with involved people. We began our journey on the risk assessment part, working together in order to perform the business and asset assessment. In this view too, there was work behind this. This is just the first iteration. As you know, if you have a background in risk assessment, or you're involved in the risk assessment process in your organization, risk assessment is an interactive and iterative process. So this is the first iteration, and we focus on the operational phase as it should be. And together with the stakeholder, we defined the business part, that is this part here, with the organization, definition of the organization. That was the easy part. So where you have the name of the organization involved, the description of the goal of the organization. Then we defined, let's say there was a baseline from our risk assessment expert, and then we, with the stakeholder, we checked it together and changed it together. We defined the business processes. Again, just a description and the goal of the business processes involved into the boundary of our risk assessment. So that makes part of the boundary of our risk assessment, and the activities linked to these business processes in order to reach the goal. For the Healthentia QTrobot, obviously, being the operational phase, the one that matters, the goal was to have a product, a functioning product that was able to manage users of clinical trials, and to manage the service from an Healthentia point of view and from the QTrobot point of view. So this is the business part, and all of this is done in order to give a context to the main part of this view, that are the malfunction and the assets. So after defining the business part, we define the asset and the malfunction part. The asset meaning we defined before with the baseline, and then together with the stakeholders, what are the critical assets of the organization in order to reach these activities and these processes. And okay, just to give you an idea of the information, again, brief information, so name, description, the category of asset, possible optional information of cost and the owner of the asset. And then there's the part linked to the risk, that is the confidentiality, availability, integrity, and efficiency values. These values at the beginning were completely blank, because these values are calculated automatically by the tool through the malfunction. So we define the assets and we define the malfunctions. I'll give you an example that is a little bit. For example, One of the malfunctions is the possibility that the exchange patient data protection is failing. This is the description and the possible consequences if this is going to happen. In order to, with the stakeholder, we define this. We define the criticality by giving it the level. In this case, the level was only vital, but in some cases, for example, this, there are some units, time units, money units. It depends on the malfunction in order to say at which, what are the possible levels. And based on that, we have this impact value. These malfunctions are linked to the assets and obviously are linked to the activities. And obviously when we then take again into consideration the assets, we can add the malfunction, the impact to that asset without thinking about the criticality, because we already defined it during the malfunction assessment phase. So just say this asset is impacted by this type of malfunction, this type of malfunction, this type of malfunction. And then automatically the platform with the algorithm that is behind defines these criticalities, as you can see, from a confidentiality, integrity, availability, and efficiency point of view. All of it for the risk assessment expert to just reason about activities, business, and malfunction, and not to take and contextualize the confidentiality, integrity, availability values without taking into consideration the assets at the beginning. So just to give the possibility to reason. So usually the users will, or you will not use for within the SDSP, if it is used as a service, match this view. Is just when the interaction is when there's the check of this situation together. And then, so the changes. In the Healthentia QTrobot use case, for example, this wasn't the beginning. I mean, there were some assets missing when we first approached this view. And there were some assets with a different criticality from the stakeholder point of view. They, when they tried to give, because we tried it, when they tried to give a possible value to confidentiality, integrity, availability, and then we performed correctly the process by adding a malfunction and letting the platform make its magic with the algorithm behind, effectively, it was different from what expected. And effectively, together with the stakeholder, we, let's say, we checked that it was true in the end, reasoning that the confidentiality and availability integrity values were effectively the ones calculated from the platform. Not that this is up to you in case of use of a service, so not in this use case, but in case this tool is used not as a service, but as an in-house tool, there are several things that can be used in order to when the iteration grows. So when there are more iteration, obviously this will not be the diagram you will see. There will be hundreds of nodes. So it can become a little bit messy. So we added some let's say usability features. For example, the possibility to highlight the assets linked to a certain activity, and the assets and the malfunction, obviously. Or the possibility to put the confidentiality, for example, to filter the elements based on confidentiality, availability point of view, and obviously their criticality. These are the main features in order to help when the situation becomes more complex. The That's all for the asset view. And once the business and asset assessment is finished, we added the part of the design. That is the one that is linked to the import I previously showed you. So requirements and design are most similar. So you import the files, and from a design point of view, all the elements of the diagram are going to be here available in order to be linked to the assets. Now, for what concerns the LIS, it may not be something that is very important, but if you see, you have here the possibility to have a look at what is linked to what in the design part. So for example, here you have the Healthentia cloud, and it's linked to API and web into the web app. Or if you take this, you have a look and you have this server. Inside this server, you have the cloud, the Nginx, the database, etc. So you can decide to take into the consideration this information when you add the malfunction and when you define the asset part. So it's something more in order to give more context based on the latest design elements that have been changed into your design. Same thing for the requirements. Now we didn't import anything in this use case, but in case of the requirements, the approach is exactly the same. You have a list of the requirements imported in XML format and in XMI format, and you are going to use this requirement and put this requirement together, linked to the asset defined here. So from the asset view, no, we don't want to change anything. From the asset view, we go to the vulnerabilities assessment. That's quite simple. Here there are the activities and assets you saw before with the domain information, and you can add some vulnerabilities to these assets. Here you have a taxonomy, and by looking at the description and at the impact type, the type of impact that is linked to this vulnerability, the risk assessment expert can add it. Here there's usually no interaction with the stakeholders if it is used as a service. So we add all the vulnerabilities that we deem relevant for each one of the assets, and we go on to the threats part and we perform exactly the same thing. So I'll take again the same asset and I show you that here you have the vulnerabilities. So you have an overview of the asset, you have an overview of the vulnerabilities that can be exploited in order or the vulnerabilities that can be exploited from the attacker. And then you have the threats with all the information here, included the categories of asset that is affected. And you have this information here, but you already have them filtered, obviously. Here in this tree, you already have the taxonomies that can be added to this asset in order to help the expert to choose the correct one. There are hundreds, obviously, of these, so it was needed, and associated vulnerabilities. And this, we left it a little bit more free. So you have the vulnerabilities here, you have a look and you can decide if it is correct to put this threat. Again, no stakeholder involvement in this part. It's up to the risk assessment expert. Specific feature for the healthcare is that we added the standards that are specific. At the moment, we added the ISO 27701 and GDPR. We are working on the others. The 27799 is in beta version, so we already have it integrated, but it's not here at the moment, needs to be tested a little bit more. And what happens is that you can decide the vulnerabilities and threats, both of them based on the standard from which they have been extracted, based on which one are relevant for that standard. Obviously, at the moment, with just 2 standards, you will not see, but there are some taxonomies that are specific for some standards. There are some that are shared between different standards. And again, that's and there's a sector filter in order to to filter all the taxonomies that are most relevant for the healthcare or for all the sectors. That's it from the threats assessment. We're almost there. Then there's the audit part, that is the security control part. In this part, during the Healthentia QTrobot part, we checked the situation of the system. Since the system was existing in this case and already up, but is going under some changes, some development in order to make it a product with the QTrobot, together with the QTrobot. So how this part works? Again, you have the standard part, the standard filter there, and you have some safeguards, and all of this safeguard has some question attached. So what happened is that through the documents we gathered the information, and we replied as experts to it. There are some, just to show you the filter here, there are some safeguards that are ISO 27001, some specific of GDPR. So you see, when you click on the standard, you have only the one specific for GDPR, for example. And nothing, there's an algorithm behind, obviously. So when you add all your, when you reply to the question, I'll now reply just to some of them. There's a calculation based on these values. That's Mehari, that's a Mehari methodology 1. And again, the value of the safeguard is calculated. The value can be from 1 to 4. So the safeguard can be there, but obviously, as you know, the safeguard, the security control can have a different strength. And that's it. This part can be performed whenever. So showing it because we put it there, because usually we perform it after we have an understanding. So after we arrive to that part, but that's obviously can be performed in any moment. Last 2 steps of the risk assessment process are these. We have this part in which we have all the scenarios with the criticality, the seriousness of the risk up there. Obviously, I will not show you all the possible filters that are in all of these table column, basically. You have scenarios with the description of the scenario, the vulnerability details, the threat details, and basically each scenario is as you know, if you have background in risk assessment, it's composed on the previous elements we already defined. So asset, vulnerability, threat. What's the difference is that we have here an intrinsic value of the scenario, so that you know how much it is likely to happen, how much it is critical, how much it is the impact. And then here you have the mitigated impact, mitigated likelihood, based on the security measures that have been added in the audit part, that leads to a certain risk that this scenario will happen, and a certain risk that the impact is going to be critical, higher, etc., etc. We can decide to avoid it, we then decide to accept it. We can decide to transfer it. This is the moment in which, again, there's again an involvement of the stakeholder, as in the previous part, in the audit part. There's an involvement, obviously. In this part, we're going to ask, is it okay for you? We accept it. If you want to transfer it, for example, to an assurance or whatever else. Otherwise, once we decide for all of them, if it must be treated, we go to the risk treatment part. And again, this part, in this part is involved the stakeholder and the people involved in the development of the medical device or healthcare system, but basically it's the risk assessment expert that, before taking into consideration this 14th scenario in this case, because it was just, we are in the middle of this iteration, so the vulnerability and threat part is not performed yet. So I added some for your sake, for the sake of this demo. So we have just 14 scenarios. Usually there are, again, hundreds. And here the risk assessment expert, based on which strategy wants to use, prevention, confining, palliation, or dissuasion, goes up there and check it out what to do in order to decrease the risk level of the scenarios. We added some features in Panacea based on user feedbacks. These features are the following. We worked on uncover the scenarios so that coming from the configuration of the tool, there are some possibilities for asset threats and the vulnerabilities to let's say, be compatible. And we added some scenarios, obviously, for the healthcare domain. So there are some scenarios that still are configured, are there, may happen, may be part of your scenarios, but they have no safeguard, no countermeasure defined yet. So from our baseline, we never took them into consideration. They may not happen in this use case. And what we do is with the stakeholder to check it out if these scenarios that are not there are scenarios that may happen. And that's how together we are improving our taxonomy together with the specific case. So let's say it's customizing not only from an healthcare point of view, but as we were saying, in a contextualized, we have a contextualized output, because some scenarios may be likely in an organization, they may not be, it may not be the case based on the risk assessment boundary and the type of organization itself, even in the same domain. We then added, okay, I will add, in order to show you, I forgot how it works here. You see, I have a decrease of the risk from higher level. From a criticality of 11 scenarios, they became low criticality. The higher one went down 2. So we have this situation if we apply the backup of software configuration safeguard. That wasn't there. And what do we have here? If we go to this safeguard I just applied, we can have a look. Oh, that's not the one. I will check another one. Okay. Okay, we have some other scenarios that use that same security control as a mitigation countermeasure, and we can have a look at the security controls that are at the scenarios that are linked to the safeguard in question. last but not least feedback feature that we added based on the feedback in Panacea project, and the one that we found most useful is the following one. I will put up the previous one so that you have more results, and it's this. Okay. Here you have, by clicking near the asset category, because this is the primary asset category, you have all the assets, all the scenarios in which an asset with that asset category is involved. And you can see how the scenarios involved with that asset category are going to change. So not only, in this case, we have just one, for the sake of this demo, we have just one category. I didn't take into consideration more than one, but if you have more than one asset category, you can see different changes in different categories. And here you can filter saying, okay, but in this category of asset, what is going to be the change if I put that safeguard? What are the scenarios, these 11 scenarios that are there, these 14 scenarios that are there, what are these scenarios, or what scenarios we are talking about? So you can have a look at the description, you can have, and whatever. Again, this is part of the risk assessment expert job, so not of the stakeholder, but it's just to show you what is the process that is behind. What happens in reality is that, if I save here, okay, what happens in reality is that in the moment I decide that this control is enough, I'm going to the project part and I will generate a report on this initial assessment. I will export it, deciding which part of the iteration I want to add. Let's say I want everything, not the comments because we didn't add them. I want it in Word. I will export a report, and once the report is created, I will show this report to the stakeholders, saying, okay, these are the security controls suggested, and these are the this is the situation of this iteration. So I will show you an example of report. No, it opened in the wrong screen. And okay, this is the type of report. And we have basically the information requested. So from the checkbox I showed you before, so project, procedure information taken from absolutely from the tool, the one that you saw before. The elements of the asset and business view, so the organization, the business processes, the malfunction, the assets, just to give context. The risk summary part, so that table with all the scenarios that were generated from our choices on asset threat and vulnerabilities here with the values detected, and the risk treatment part. And this is the part that usually is the one we work more with the stakeholder. That is, okay, I have in the risk treatment these safeguards that were suggested. And you can see here, you have, okay, currently this is not implemented. What we suggest is that you implement this safeguard with a target value that is 4. So the strength is the maximum strength. And okay, down, this is the summary part, but then you have divided by asset type, exactly what you had into the view before. So the table with the number of scenarios and the scenarios with the asset basically, and the divided by safeguard that can mitigate them. And that's it. Here you have in the annex information about the threat baseline used, but I must say we never had the need until now in this project for this. It's just for completeness. That's the report. Last thing, because before I close the demo, is in the treatment part, there's an export of requirements. So based on the detected safeguard, we can decide to, and all the associated assets, we can decide to, here in this use case, there's no requirement part, but here you will see if it was imported, the requirement file, you will see all the list of requirements already there. So the requirements part will be filled with the requirements imported. So the one the stakeholder provided us. And this RTR part is the possibility to create requirements, having a look at the safeguard and saying, okay, I detected this safeguard. If I add this security control to the system, I need a requirement that is associated to it. And then there's a possibility to export these requirements in order to suggest them to the engineering part as requirements, or for modification of existing requirements or for new requirements, and to export them in RECIF format. This just to give you the other output of the. And I think that's all from a demo perspective. I gave you an overview of the main features on the risk assessment part. Obviously, there are other features I didn't show you, but I mostly think that's what can be interesting for you. Take into consideration that the idea is to contextualize it in an healthcare domain, and one of the main steps in it, even if it's not very clear maybe from a user perspective looking at this is a risk assessment, but it's a risk assessment with taxonomies specialized and scenarios specialized for healthcare. That's our goal in this project, and that's why we're extracting taxonomies from the major standard of the major standard healthcare related. That's our goal. So from a usability perspective, this will be used mostly by the risk assessment expert. So in case it is in-house, a person specialized in the organization, in case it's a service, a person that is from us. But mostly what we are interested in from this tool point of view for the Panacea project is the output and the parts in which the stakeholder involves, and how we can specialize them for the healthcare part, and how we can ease them from an interaction point of view with the stakeholders. Just take this into consideration. And that's it.
Thanks very much. That was really interesting. I think we can move on to the open discussions now. I don't know if you want to, you might think the presenters this morning might it might be a good idea to keep your presentations open in case we have a specific question related to something that's been presented or shown through the demo. But we have a comment to the question from Gabriele about the focus of the demonstration, and just to say that he's replied. So we focused obviously on the QTrobot of Healthenia integration this morning in the demo. I don't know if any of the participants have any specific questions about what you've seen, if you need a clarification or more details about something. If not, we'll move on to the polls. Oh, Mohan has raised his hand. Go ahead. Christina, can you unmute? Can you give Mohan the right to unmute?
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. Hi. That was indeed a great demo, and at least I could get to know about the tool, and it is definitely I can definitely find a value in that. I just want to know, like, whether you have any plan to release this as a commercial product, or will it be only to the validation purpose, or what's the future goal of this? What's the future plan?
Okay, the future plan, currently we're using it internally to perform our risk assessments, but we never used them until now into the healthcare part because we configured it. We used it for ISO 27001 risk assessments. Mainly, our main target until now was the space domain. So the meaning is the risk assessment part is well grounded. We used it quite a lot. The taxonomies we are introducing now and all the customization for the healthcare part will be used. Yes, we actually will use it for new risk assessment if the possibility arises. But until now we use it as a service. Even if some clients during demos asked us if it was possible to have it as in-house, so to have a training and to give a training to their experts so that they could use it into their organization. Until now, no training has been performed because we are not that we didn't arrive COVID issues didn't stop the conversation before we could do it. But yes, that was the request from quite a lot of customers.
Okay, thank you.
Super. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I would have one. Yeah, my question is, this is a very interesting tool. But I mean, a medical device manufacturer has to manage a very similar process for all the other standards that apply to a medical device and to all the requirements, so beyond cybersecurity that a medical device has. So do you use this tool also in general for design and requirement capture, and or is that specific for cybersecurity?
The tool is born with the idea to perform a real risk assessment, so not cyber related, and that's how we used it until now. In this project specifically, the boundary of the risk assessment has been narrowed to the cyber threats and the cyber risks. So, but that was a choice that has been performed at a project level and when defining the use cases for this project. So basically, yes, we usually, that's the normal use is not only cyber, but taking into consideration the rest. Take into consideration that for the use case I just show you, even if it's in the middle of the iteration, so you cannot see the complete usefulness of this. But for the FBG use case, already we detected that only cyber wasn't enough. So we tried to open a little bit the boundary and to take into consideration already some not cyber related, but something that was not cyber, but that was linked to a cyber threat. But for a system, an healthcare system, what we detected with the partner FPG is that you cannot take into consideration only cyber when working for an hospital system, for example.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, both of you. Are there any other questions? We're doing pretty well for time, and we have a few polls to go through, but they shouldn't take too long. I have a question, actually, if I may. So we have two questions. One of my questions is, you showed us the reports, yeah, from, based on implementing the safeguards, etc. Now, there's been a lot of discussion in the community in recent months about how some of the investments in cybersecurity are actually expected to decrease over the coming year and a little bit beyond that, because the decision makers inside an organization, be it a public or a private company, organization, aren't seeing the outcomes of their investments. So my question would be, you know, how useful do we think this tool is in terms of the reports that it gives, and we can look at the impacts and the business aspects? Do we see this as a value add compared to what's already on the market, or do we see it as a, you know, a good feature to have? I don't know who wants to answer this, but you know, it does spring to mind because, you know, if we're seeing lower investments in cybersecurity solutions, and because people aren't seeing they want more priorities on the outcome based, how would this tool specifically fit into this scenario? Or is it something that we can, you know, we don't have to answer it today, but I think it is quite interesting because these are, you know, there's some new data that's been published recently. We did a seminar last week on cybersecurity to some master students at the University of Pisa, which is where, you know, Trust IT is based. But it was like a very interesting point that came out, and sort of something to bear in mind. My other question would be, and this is really more of my own personal curiosity, because I work in standards as well, how easy is it to actually implement the standards, and how much time and effort does it require?
To the last one is simple to reply. We have some experts working on the extraction, and the extraction is quite a heavy effort. There's something out there, payment by paying, but they're not complete. And what we are trying to do is not only to have a taxonomies from the standards, so to have the standards to really deeply study them, extract the scenarios that they are taking into consideration, and from those scenarios extract all the threats, the vulnerabilities, the asset they're trying to. That's not easy, and most of all we are trying to do it in a contextualized context. So some of these standards as GDPR are very general, and we are trying to take this standard and put it in a context specific of the healthcare and medical device manufacturing. So the scenarios that you see now in a demo, even if it was long, I can assure you I had demo that were longer. When you have a look at the taxonomy, you see that the scenarios are not general. They are with threats specific, with vulnerabilities specific. And that's because the more specific you are, the simpler it is for the stakeholder to see what the threat is, what the scenario is, what are we talking about, and what is missing, obviously. So the effort is quite heavy. At the moment we are at, it takes a month, it took a month for each of the standards. Obviously it depends on the standard, because 27799 is a thing. MDR standard, that is a more general one, to contextualize it is a huge issue. So the effort is quite heavy. But
that's interesting. Yeah. Good. Yeah. So we do need, so the standards are there as sort of part of the safeguards and to ensure that people are using a sort of a common approach. But it's very interesting that you say that actually applying it to a specific sector, and healthcare being a particularly challenging one, and in any case, that's really interesting. Thanks a lot for that comment. Thank you. I think we can move on to the live polling now, and that will also help us then perhaps zoom in on a few specific aspects. I'm not sure, we're in the middle of storms here in Italy, and it's going all the way from Pisa right down to the south, but I see that my colleague who is in Puglia, she's still on the line. I think we can start launching the polls, Christina. Yeah?
Yes.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, you're still there. Hang on in there. Heavy winds down in the south where Christina is. We have thunder and rain here in Pisa. that we're still online. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Okay, I'm now going to launch the first poll, which concerns the need for fine-tuning. I'm going to read the question, and I will give you about 1 minute to answer, as it's very quick to do so. So now you should all be able to see it. I'm reading the question. So, based on your role and field of expertise, with reference to the solution that has been presented, would you suggest some fine-tuning? So we have 3 options: yes, many suggestions, or yes, some suggestions, or no suggestions.
And we'll give people a few more minutes, well, another half a minute to reply. Otherwise, we'll just close it because it's already a feedback that we can. Take it to 1 minute 30 seconds, Christina. The answers that we have so far are already something that we can open a discussion on.
So I'm going to end the poll. Thanks. And you should now be able to see the results. So we do have some suggestions. Steph, if you agree, I go on with the polls now, and then maybe you can.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we'll do all of them, and then we'll open the floor to people.
The next set of polls concerns the fit for purpose. First question of this set is, based on your role and field of expertise, with reference to the solution that has been presented, what do you think in terms of output completeness? Is it not complete or partially complete, or complete but with poor presentation, or you consider it to be fully complete? Thank you. Okay, I'm now going to close the poll and share the results. We have 1 vote for partially complete and 1 vote for complete. I'm moving on to the next poll. Based on your role and field of expertise, with reference to the solution that has been presented, what do you think in terms of its usefulness? It solves no current issues, it doesn't help too much, it may solve some issues, or it's very useful. You can already start voting. Okay, thank you for your votes. We have 100% of votes for may solve some issues. Moving on to the next one. Again, on the fit for purpose, this time we're asking you to, based on your role or field of expertise, what do you think in terms of capability to cope with healthcare sector specificities? Is it A-specific, it copes with few healthcare specificities, or with many of them, or it fully captures the healthcare specificities?
So this question is about, thinking about the specific characteristics of a hospital environment, where we're time pressured staff, non cyber security specific, no sort of even awareness, primary goal being to look after the patients. So how well do we think that this fits into, how fit for purpose is this tool for the healthcare environment?
Okay, thank you for voting. The voted options are 50% A-specific and 50% it copes with many healthcare specificities. Next poll, still in the fit for purpose, we're asking you, based on your role or field of expertise with reference to the solution presented, what do you think in terms of complete functions? Key functions are missing. It has poor coverage, it has medium coverage, or it has full coverage. Thank you again. I will share the results. 100% voted for it has medium coverage. Moving now to the next set of polls. The next set of polls concerns the value added compared to the state of the art. So we're asking you for the first question, based on your role or field of expertise with reference to the solution presented, this time in comparison with the similar solutions you are aware of, what do you think in terms of its innovativeness? Is it behind others, like others, somewhat innovative, or very innovative? Thank you. I'm sharing the results. 50% of voted options is somewhat innovative and 50% very innovative. Thank you for your feedback. I'm moving to the next poll, still in the set of value added versus state of the art. We're asking you, with reference to the solution presented, what do you think of it in terms of output completeness? Still in comparison with the similar solutions that you are aware of. Options are less complete, like others, a bit more complete or absolutely more complete? Thank you. I'm sharing the results. 100% of votes went to the option a bit more complete in comparison with similar solutions. The next question is based on your role and field of expertise with reference to the solution, what do you think in terms of its usefulness? I'll read the options. It's less useful or same specificity? It's a bit more specific or absolutely more useful? Thank you for voting. Voted options are 50% same specificity and 50% it's a bit more specific. We now have the last question of this set of polls. Based on your role and field of expertise with reference to the solution presented and in comparison with similar solution you are aware of, what do you think in terms of completeness of functions? It's less specific, it has the same type of function, it's a bit more complete or absolutely more complete? Thank you. Okay, thank you all for your feedback. On this last poll, there's the option voted is a bit more complete. With this, I'm ending the poll sections and I'm passing the floor back to you, Stephanie. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Christine. So that's our polls for this morning completed. We still have around 10 minutes for an interactive discussion with the panel, with the participants.
We cannot hear you. I see you're not muted, but for some reason.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So we have about 10 minutes left for the interactive discussions. We can either go through the poll results or maybe partners from Rena and Rea, so Raffaele, Martina, and Federica could perhaps.
I still cannot hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me.
I think some technical issue with the microphone. Maybe in the meantime, if any of the attendees has any question or any point you would like to discuss, I gave you the right to unmute your microphone, so please feel free to to just activate your microphone and share with us any feedback or question you may have.
I have a comment about, I mean, I like very much the proposed tool. The challenge is to see whether this, say, kind of automated application of rules to projects, to requirements and specifications can work satisfactorily. I mean, in general, you have risk managers that you know, study the standards and knowing the product, apply the rules to the product with a level of knowledge that is hard to think it can be somehow automated. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I guess that with automated, you mean the automated calculation of the risk, right?
No, the translation of the standards into this taxonomy, let's say, part. That's, you know, I think the difficult part.
Okay, if I may, I agree. I work on this, and I totally agree with you about it. The meaning is that's why during this project we are trying to take advantage of our partner, that is a medical device manufacturer, the other partner is the hospital, to check it out against our taxonomy completeness. Obviously, some of the features we added as one of the scenarios that are not covered and whatever are in order to try to overcome partially what you're saying. But as I was saying, if you have a look out there, there's nothing from a taxonomy point of view. And I think at least from our point of view, it's a starting point, obviously. So I completely agree with you, but literally there's nothing out there from this point of view at the moment.
Thank you.
I don't know if you can hear me now.
Yes, Steph.
Yeah, okay, sorry, I probably was too far away from the mic. Yeah, there has been a lot of discussions at the European level about the lack of taxonomy in general in cybersecurity. And I don't know if you're aware that there are 4 competence centres or pilot competence centres that were set up, one of them being Concordia, Echo, Sparta and CyberSec for Europe. I'm not sure how aware you are of these competent pilots, but one of the tasks that they were given was to contribute to the definition of a taxonomy that could be standardized and agreed upon in Europe and potentially also globally, and that was carried out by the Joint Research Council. But I know that there have been discussions in EXO, for example, so the European Cybersecurity Organization. Some of our colleagues in the Cyber Watching Coordination Support Action were also involved in that. But I think it's quite a complicated field. I don't personally know very much about it. I just wanted to, you know, highlight these this activity. But you know, I think that, you know, maybe it is sort of difficult. You know, maybe we should try and understand where the boundaries lie in terms of, you know, real world applications of and usage of tools and taxonomies. Maybe, you know, this is something that perhaps we could, you know, have a parallel discussion with these other peer projects and coordinate this cyber watching to understand perhaps a little bit more the context, which we are doing anyway, but it was, you know, where we could extend this dialogue with them to perhaps, you know, get their viewpoints on it, because they do have experts in the consortium that maybe could also help us on this. So this is something, this is a food for thought for Panacea, you know, as we move forward in the next few months. But I don't know if there's anything more to add to this question. I think it's a good one. I don't know if you want to add anything else, or if there are other questions. We have a few minutes left before we close, and it's as we approach lunchtime. I'm sure you're all very eager to take the lunch break. Just to bear in mind while you're thinking about it, just to remind you that we have the second part of the Security by Design framework, looking at the compliance support platform this afternoon, starting at 2:30 to 4:30. So we'll be back there with more on that specific aspect of the framework. So, you know, we strongly, you know, encourage you to join us this afternoon. We do, though, value very much your, you know, your feedback. I don't know if there's anything that, you know, partners from Rail Arena want, you know, is there any points that you'd like to explore a little bit further? We have a few more minutes left on the outcomes of the surveys, where you might appreciate a little bit more feedback. This is also something we can take offline as well. I don't see anybody. So maybe we could just do a quick wrap up then on my side. You can, of course, get in touch with us through the email exchanges that we've had. Let me just move a few things. Oops. Right, so here are a couple of ways to keep engaging with us, obviously, not just through the exchanges and that we're having this week, well, that we had last week and this week through the virtual workshop sessions, but other ways that you can connect with us are, of course, through LinkedIn and our Twitter account. We have an online tool called a Lookout Watch, which gathers a lot of information about EU policy, international policy regulations, market research, research papers. So if you have anything that you think could benefit, not just Panacea, but in general, the community, or the healthcare sector particularly, but more generally the cybersecurity and privacy research community, that would be, you know, your inputs to that are welcome. You can just send us the information by email, or you can send us documents directly that we can then add on to our Lookout Watch. And just to wrap up, next week, Panacea will be speaking at the Connect Autumn School virtual conference on digital health. Sabina Magalini, who we met at the beginning of the webinar this morning, will be in the session on cybersecurity, a priority for healthcare, where she'll be joining the acting head of Directorate H at DG Connect, one of the ENISA experts for healthcare cybersecurity, and the head of the Portuguese National Cybersecurity Centre. So this should be all available live streaming, so either you can register and follow it afterwards through the recordings or live on the day. And Sabina will be talking on Monday afternoon. So that's when in the session on Monday, so the 28th, she'll be talking about specifically about the Panacea experiences and findings during the COVID pandemic, and bringing some real world healthcare perspectives into the discussion with the policy and other stakeholders. remember then that, just to remind you then, that we have the open call open. Deadline for applications is the 15th of October. Please feel free to also pass on the announcement to people if you know any relevant applicants for this open call. It would be much appreciated. And just to wrap up and say thanks again for your valuable feedback. We really do value your time, and we know that we're all even more constrained through the fact that we're all working virtually now. It's actually probably fills our days more than when we were able to kind of meet face to face. So we, again, just to say a big thank you for your feedback. Are there any comments from our presenters? Anything to add on your side? And a big thank you also to Sabina for giving the welcome, and to then our presenters, Raffaella, Martina and Federica this morning, and to colleagues from Trust IT, Christina Mancarella and Rita Frida, who's brand new to Panacea, so welcome on board. Okay, thanks a lot, everybody. Stay safe, and remember that the recordings and the presentations will be available online once we end the series of webinars, which will be the last two, or we have the one this afternoon and two more tomorrow, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. These will be covering the non-technical tools, so the secure behavior nudging and the package for training and education on cybersecurity in healthcare. So stay tuned with Panacea. Thanks again for joining us. Bye for now. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye. Bye.